You guys wanted a whole process video on one of these, so here it is. Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. I'm doing another Chinese Zodiac yin-yang design and we've reached Year of the Snake on the rotation. Sometimes I don't have an exact idea of what I want to do for these designs, and the sketch process ends up involving a lot more erasing or pulling out references, but in this case I knew exactly what I wanted to do as soon as I saw which animal I was going to do next. I always start by tracing my circle tool, marking 4 points 90 degrees apart, and marking the quarters so I can use my compass to draw 2 smaller circles inside. If I were going to shape this like a traditional yin and yang, this is also how I would start and simply not draw alternating halves of the inner circles. But in this case, these are guides, not part of the intended final line work. I put the head and any other front-end features that I want in focus inside the inner circle and make sure the rest of the body area has less detail but still makes sense. Since these are animals, I've been having fun making the tails extend outside the original larger circle boundary. I do try to keep in mind what will overlap with the mirror of the design as I'm planning one side, but exactly how it will overlap isn't my main concern yet. Once I've got the single animal half at a point I'm happy with, I bust out a sheet of tracing paper and copy it. You'll notice I start by retracing that circle tool and marking center and outer edge quarter lines. This is so I can line it up better in the next step. You'll also notice I'm still only doing one side of the yin-yang. I don't end up with a complete yin-yang design until I've transferred this to my final paper, so theoretically if I were to reuse this tracing, I would probably come up with a slightly different final yin-yang the second time. Using a light pad, I transfer the tracing paper copy of the design twice, using those quarter markings I made to line it up when I flip for the second half. Sections of the design that were in the inner circle on the original sketch get to overlap onto the body and tail sections of the other half. You'll notice I'm using multiple colors, and that's to make it easier on myself planning which sections will be filled in black and which sections will be left white. I like to try to make sure that any points of overlap between the two halves have a distinct edge, and sometimes that means adding a white gap or a black fill at this stage. I was using red and green pencils to trace the two halves of the design, but you'll also notice me using a blue to scribble over sections that will be filled in black. You'll also notice I ended up simplifying the shapes of the snake body coils where they meet in the center of the design after first trying to plan gaps and fills to make the coils obvious. It was going to be a bunch of small pieces that would add clutter without meaning to the design, so I flattened it down to an S-curve and left it alone. The colored sketching pencils I'm using are mostly Prismacolor Kohl Erase, but at one stage I ended up using my Staedtler Norris Red instead of my Kohl Erase Red. The final paper is a heavyweight Bristol from Strathmore, and the inking work was done using Micron and Tombow pens. Normally in these Zodiac videos I tell you about the astrology and beliefs around the animal we're working with, so let's break into that for a few minutes while you watch the time lapse of me inking, and then I'll get back to talking about the process when we go digital at the end. The snake is the 6th animal in the Chinese Zodiac, and Year of the Snake happens to be both my husband and my oldest brother. Yes, if you've been paying close attention, that does mean I'm 1 year older than my husband. I'm such a cradle robber, I know. Snake's trine group is snake, rooster, ox. Snake needs rooster, rooster needs ox, ox needs snake. Some sources I've found say they're most compatible with their trine partners plus horse, while others say trine partners plus monkey. They're not a strong match with rabbit, goat, and dog, and incompatible with tiger and pig. Good thing I'm on the border of rabbit and dragon, hey? Dragon is a better match. Snake is also associated with the 4th lunar month, the season of summer, the hours of 9 to 11 a.m., and Fridays. On the yin and yang, snake is yin. Their lucky numbers are 2, 8, and 9, and they should avoid 1, 6, and 7. Their lucky flowers are orchid and cactus. Their lucky colors are red, yellow, and black, and they should avoid the colors white, gold, and brown. One of my sources say that they are associated with the mineral amethyst, which I find interesting because in Western birthstone charts, that's February and most closely aligned with Aquarius, which is either the first or last lunar month, certainly not the 4th. Snakes tend to be calm, humorous, alert, observant, quiet, and intelligent. They're deceptively silent, avoiding small talk and speaking slowly when they do remember they have voices, but this doesn't mean they're stupid, far from it. Snakes are quick thinkers and they're usually right. They can be impulsive and tend to distrust others. Men born in the year of the snake tend to be kind, gentle, and empathetic. They like to surprise the people they love with little gifts and acts of love, but they're not good in social situations and may resort to jokes to ease awkwardness. Women born in the year of the snake are beautiful inside and out. They're graceful, elegant, and very intelligent. They seek power and success and may come off as cold or uncaring when pursuing their goals. Their strong sense of self-confidence tends to manifest in astute fashion sense and a love for arts, but nothing too abstract. They are jealous by nature, and while they can harness their jealousy to motivate themselves, they don't like to see others succeed more than they have. People born in the year of the snake are great in jobs that require fast thinking and improvisation. They excel in competitive jobs and sports, but only in positions that allow for their own unique approaches to problems. They aren't suited for jobs that require following a rigid method to achieve their goals. Snakes are heavily influenced by genetics and will be as healthy or unhealthy as their parents. They tend to be very picky eaters, and this usually leads to extremely unbalanced diets. Due to their quiet, bottled-up nature, snakes are prone to anxiety. Alright, digital time. I have scanned the original and I'm editing in an old Creative Suite 5.5 version of Photoshop, but this could be done in any editor. The first thing I want to do after rotating the canvas is get rid of any colors left behind by the colored sketching pencils. I went into color balance first by mistake, ignore that. The important part is the hue and saturation adjustments, where I select color channels that may be present and adjusted. I dragged saturation all the way down and lightness all the way up to essentially erase these colors from the image. Once I had the unwanted colors removed, I did a few rounds of levels adjustment to make the blacks darker and the whites brighter. At At this point, apparently OBS Studio gave up on smoothly recording what I was doing, but I went into the selection menu and chose highlights, then inverted the selection to isolate the design. I've changed colors around, and now I'm looking for stray spots that need to be ignored or filled in. Once I'm happy with that, I'll use the Magic Wand selection tool once again to isolate the design so I can fill it in on a new fresh layer without any artifacts left behind from cleanup. I would really like to know why OBS Studio decided that we wanted a frame rate of roughly 1 frame per minute. You may or may not see me opening the Photoshop file from my Year of the Rat design to snag the signature. I tend to do that whether I've signed the original or not, because cleaning up a signature so it can be used on a transparent background is a long, tedious process. Why do it more than once per year? From this file, I can save it with or without the solid white background, or I can flip and tile it for different patterns to make options on print-on-demand sites like Redbubble a little more interesting. If you want to see more of the putting designs like this on Redbubble process, I did that with the Year of the Tiger design earlier this year, and I also have a Redbubble tutorial video. If you're looking for more to watch, I've got some suggestions up on the left side of the screen now. Don't forget to like, comment, and maybe even subscribe, because if you like living life creatively, whatever that means to you, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Bye guys!